Hello everybody and welcome to today's webinar. My name is Ben Renison. I'm a clinical education nurse specialist at Salts Healthcare. So I've always worked in general surgical nursing. I've been a specialist stoma care nurse for about 8 years and worked for Salts Healthcare in West Yorkshire. Now I work at Salts Academy teaching the new stoma nurses of the future to ensure that they can provide amazing care to their patients. So today I want to welcome our star guest, who is Nicki Williams. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Ben. Really, really happy to be here. I'm Nicki Williams. I'm a nutritionist and I'm the founder of Happy Hormones for Life, where we help women mainly and men to rebalance their hormones, reclaim their health and feel better than ever. And today I want to talk to you about happy hormones and how to boost them.
So Nicki, what are the happy hormones and how can we relate this to the patients that we care for, the stoma patients?
So really want to get into what hormones are and particularly how to boost your happy hormones, because mental health is so critical, and especially this day and age, and especially if you have a health condition. So keeping on top of that and boosting them where possible is so important for our general well-being and day-to-day care. So I want to kick off really with what hormones are, because I don't know about anybody else, but when I first started studying hormones, I kind of have heard about a few of them. You know, the key, you might have heard of estrogen and testosterone, things like that. We know those are key hormones, but I didn't realise that we had so many of them. We have over 100 running around the body that are identified, and possibly more that we don't know about. But essentially, hormones are our chemical messengers, and they run around the body and they tell our cells everywhere from head to toe what to do. They control the way the cell functions, and that obviously controls how we are, how we act, how we feel, our general health and well-being. So these hormones are obviously important. They all have a job to do individually, and it's a bit like an orchestra. If you can imagine a great big orchestra with everyone playing their own instrument, and the conductor's there and everyone sounds amazing. When it's all in balance and in harmony, the sound is incredible. But when one hormone is out of balance, say that somebody's out of tune or whatever, it ruins the whole performance and everyone else is affected. So that's a good way of looking at your hormones in terms of how they work together. And if one's kind of out, it does affect all the others. So I'm not going to say here that you need to know about all 100 hormones, because nobody does, and we don't need to go that deep. But there are some really key hormones that have simple ways that we can boost them to make ourselves feel better and generally improve our health and well-being. So do you want to get into those?
Absolutely, and I think it's so important, especially for people who are going through quite a traumatic experience. Some people are being diagnosed with cancers, some people might have a debilitating disease which they're going to have to live for the rest of their life. Then they have an operation, then they have a stoma bag. So they've got lots of things which are, challenging their everyday life. And I can imagine that their hormones will be affected by all of this change. So it would be great for us to look at those specific and important ones and how we can really then, influence these people to make them changes for their life.
Oh, absolutely. It's so key. And this isn't rocket science. This is just key bits of knowledge that we possibly, we don't get taught about necessarily at school, or, doctors don't often have a lot of time to teach us about each of these hormones. So if we know about them and how to boost them, then we have a bit more control over how we're feeling when in a lot of cases we feel a little bit out of control, especially when you've got a serious condition like that.
Absolutely,
so
yes.
The first one I want to talk about is one that you may have heard about is serotonin. Everyone knows that this is your feel-good hormone and it's your happy hormone essentially. It's one of the neurotransmitters that the brain produces. So a neurotransmitter just means a brain hormone. It's the same kind of thing. And serotonin is really key for our mood, so our mental health, but also for our sleep, for pain regulation and just feeling kind of normal and happy. It's produced mainly in, actually, you think it's a brain hormone, and I've said it's a brain hormone, but actually 90% of it is produced in the gut.
Wow.
So, when you've got gut issues or digestive problems, as I know many of your patients do, then there may be some lack of serotonin. So it's really important that we, really boost that as much as possible, because again, your gut health is key to producing serotonin. There is some that's produced in the brain as well, though. So there is a little bit of everything. Now, how to get more serotonin? One of the key things that we need to be doing is getting some daylight. Now, why that's important is serotonin is really important for your sleep-wake cycle, which means that we all have a 24-hour circadian rhythm, it's called, for sleeping and waking. So the body wakes up in the morning with daylight and naturally it sleeps when it's dark. That's kind of roughly how it works. But serotonin is needed in the morning. So when we wake up, it's really important to get some daylight. Now, you can either go outside for a walk and get daylight. It doesn't have to be sunshine, just daylight, fresh air and daylight. But if you can't get out for any reason, just opening a window and just putting your face out to the sky, whether it's sunny or not, it might be raining, but just open the window and get some daylight on your face. That'll trigger serotonin production. So that's going to make you feel good. I don't know about any of you guys or you, Ben, yourself, but you know, I personally, when I go out for a walk and get daylight on me and look up at the sky, it instantly makes me feel better.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think just going, like you said, for that short walk, isn't it, in the morning, it just wakes you up. And I think for a lot of our patients who are probably newly post-operative, they're going to struggle to get out for those walks. So knowing that they can just open the window and just get a bit of that vitamin D, so to speak, just to help them wake up and like I said, the circadian rhythm?
Rhythm, yes.
Yeah, just to get them, you know, into that cycle of the day would be really quite beneficial for them, I would have thought.
It is, and also I would say if you can't even get that daylight for any reason, you might be, you know, some people work shifts, etc. So sometimes it's difficult, especially in the winter when there's not much daylight around. You can get these light lamps as well, which can be really helpful for people, especially if you get a little bit depressed in the winter. SAD is a seasonal affective disorder that affects a lot of people during the winter, and these lights these little lamps you can buy just gives you that bit of daylight that actually can stimulate that serotonin.
Wow, that's good to know.
So if you struggle with getting out or getting that light exposure, that's a good solution.
Yeah, and I think people have, when they've been in hospital, for example, you know, they've probably changed their normal habits. So instead of getting up at 8, 9 o'clock, if they're lucky, they'll have been woken up at maybe 5:30 to get their observations done. So when they come home again, things change again, don't they? So getting back into that rhythm is probably a really good thing for them to, you know, get back into the norm, so to speak.
Yeah. And the other way to boost serotonin, and it actually works for most of these hormones I'll be talking about, is exercise and movement.
Yeah.
That is another way to stimulate that serotonin production. Another way is to eat some protein, because we need protein, amino acids to make serotonin as well. So any kind of protein foods, which include kind of meat, fish, dairy, nuts, seeds, legumes, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Soy, anything, you know, whether it's vegetarian or animal based. Protein is incredibly important to make these hormones that I'm talking about today, and a few of them as well. So
and that's really
those are
important.
some key.
It's one of the things I think all kind of nurses will probably tell in their stoma patient is protein is the building blocks, isn't it? It's going to help you to recover quicker. And I think for lots of patients as well who have a new stoma, and especially if they've had an ileostomy formed, there are certain foods which, as you've said, like legumes and nuts and seeds and things, which need to be avoided. So it would be really important to speak to your stoma nurse there and ask, you know, if you've got this list of foods which is going to help to boost their, you know, protein, help them take in more serotonin, actually what things can I avoid, but what things, more importantly, can I have to keep them safe as well after the operation?
Absolutely, yeah. Make sure that, your protein source is something that you obviously is not going to make your condition worse.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. We don't want that.
Then the second hormone I want to talk about is dopamine, and that's our reward hormone. So that's the one that's responsible for our motivation, our focus. It's also the one that we feel when we do something really good, like we eat an amazing meal like chocolate or something really, a treat or something like that. So it can lead to things like addictive behaviors. So of course we know about, you know, drug and alcohol very, you know, flick that dopamine switch, as does sugar. So it's one that we do need to manage and be careful of. But we do, if we can focus on boosting it naturally, that's where we really need to go with that. And it can really help with, you know, as I said, ambition, motivation, getting out of bed in the morning, you know, that sort of drive and focus and feelings of well-being and generally happiness as well. But that feeling that you get when you've had something really nice, like a treat, but without damaging your health.
Okay, great. And I think that's probably a really, really good one for people who have undergone an operation and are probably feeling a little bit low. So the motivation to get up and, like you've said yourself, get out of bed or even go for a short walk or, you know, pick up the phone to a family member. actually they're less likely going to do that because they're just feeling that little bit low. So how can we boost that then? What's the
So
best way?
little things like, even just setting a goal, even if it's just a small goal to achieve, and it doesn't have to be a big one. It can be just a daily goal, maybe just getting outside for 5 minutes, or just achieving something lights up that dopamine receptor. So that's a really good way of doing it. Listening to your favourite music is another one. We all know how we feel when we put on our favourite tracks. Music can be so uplifting, and that flicks on the dopamine as well. So put your favourite playlist on, have a little dance around the kitchen if that's your thing. Always makes you feel good and uplifted. Again, exercise, really important. Anything you can do to getting out in nature, that's a good one too. Eating chocolate is a good one, but I wouldn't recommend, the sugary types. A piece or 2 pieces of dark chocolate, the over 70% variety, is amazing. It's going to give your dopamine receptors a boost because it's chocolate, and whatever kind of chocolate is going to do that.
I think we're all a bit like that.
But we want to be healthy with our chocolate intake, so we're not doing any damage with too much sugar. So
yeah, that's good.
The dark variety is really healthy for you. It's full of antioxidants, and that's going to help your general health.
And is it those that are probably 99%, do they say?
Nobody wants 99% chocolate. It's pretty tasteless.
Oh, right, okay.
I don't know if you've ever tried that.
No,
but
never.
Even I'm quite hardcore and I wouldn't do that. I think, over 70%, the 70%, if you're not used to it, it's probably where you start, is the 70%. And then you can kind of inch your way up the percentages if you feel like that's somewhere you want to go. But for most people, 70% is a nice one.
Okay. It's probably quite important that people are addressing these things. And again, appetite is a big thing which people suffer with in the early days. So, they're not going to want to eat a full chocolate cake. They're going to be maybe just going in and having a couple pieces of chocolate. So if that's boosting their dopamine and giving small tasks to do, like you've said there, as a stoma care nurse, teaching patients how to manage their stoma initially, very challenging. Taking those small steps to achieve just the smallest thing for that day actually can help to boost these things as well.
So important for your motivation as well. And the last thing I'd say about dopamine is it's really helpful if you can practice some gratitude. Now, I know sometimes you're in a situation where you're not particularly feeling that grateful for it, but there's always something in your life where you're better off than someone else. So you've got shelter, you've got food on the table, anything that you can feel grateful for is a really good place and a good way of boosting a bit of dopamine, because it's amazing when you start to feel gratitude. That's a really lovely feeling to have, and that's going to make you feel happier.
Yeah, and writing that down, perhaps maybe every day, writing something that you're grateful for or something.
You can get gratitude journals on Amazon, and I've got one at home, and I just write 3 things I'm grateful for at the end of the day. And they could be tiny. I've seen my flowers have grown today, or something really, really small, but that makes you happy, it gives you a bit of joy. Really important to write that down. It changes the way you feel about things. It really does.
Might be a bit of a struggle for some people if they just really are feeling low. Everything is just not going their way really. And therefore, how would you say to people who are just thinking, oh, life is rubbish, I've been given this diagnosis, I've given this stoma, I don't want to get out of bed, don't want to do anything, leave me alone. What would you say they can do to try and, like I say, boost that?
Any of the things we've been talking about. So just that's a small bit of movement, or trying to get outside in nature is really, really healing. So if you can get out for a walk, or if you can just get into a green space, or even be around plants, if you can get small plants in your room, for instance, that has been shown in studies to lift your mood. Because you're next to nature, and nature is so healing. So nature, listening to music, anything that you brings you a little bit of joy and gets you out of that state will be helpful. And eating well as much as you can. I know that's difficult too, but staying hydrated and eating healthily is going to really help those happy hormones.
And I think for people who, like you said, they are struggling those things, it's not about doing it all, is it? It's about little tiny steps that you can take, even if it's half a piece of chocolate to boost your emotions.
Absolutely.
Having a short walk to the end of the drive and back, which is, it can be a massive amount of, energy to try and even think about that. But then building on that every day and getting out into the light, get your headphones on and have a little walk out in nature and actually coming back, you might feel a lot better.
Touching the ground as well, like so with your bare feet, or if it's too cold, or with your hands. That's why gardening is so healing as well, because you're out in nature, you're touching the earth, and we're getting those electrons from the earth. I know it sounds a bit woo-woo, but actually there is science behind that. It's called grounding and earthing, if you've not heard of it before, and it can be very healing in that way too. And it's just a little extra thing that you can do to just make you feel better.
Yeah, so hear that. Get out in your garden, get your shoes and your socks off, get on that grass.
in
If
the
you've got a
dirt.
dog, make sure you bring a little bag with you first, just in case. But yeah, feel the earth. It's probably the best thing you can do.
The next hormone is oxytocin. Now, you may have heard of this. It's because it's called the love hormone. Now, it's primarily produced in the brain for women having childbirth. So it actually triggers the contraction of the uterus when you're about to give birth. And then it helps with the bonding when you're breastfeeding. So that's what it's primarily used for, but actually it gets released in lots of different ways. So it gets released when we are connecting with each other. So like hugging, holding hands, stroking your pet even, hugging your child, hugging each other, obviously intimacy as well, but also things like having a massage. So any kind of touch therapy, it stimulates oxytocin and it makes you feel really, really good. And the more love hormone we get, not only do we get the benefits of that internally, but we also feel better because, we feel more loving and bonded with and connected with each other and with our animals as well. It's not just humans.
Yeah, wow. And I think, thinking back to the serotonin, they're probably working together, aren't they, to make you feel, a lot better. And probably a lot of patients, especially, working in practice, a lot of patients have said they don't really want anybody touching them. They've got this new bag, they don't feel the best. And also one of the things that often, creeps up is body image. Body image is a big thing, and being able to reconnect and get back out there. So what would you think would be the best thing for them to try and do to get back into those relationships?
Yeah, it's really, really difficult. But again, baby steps, hugging is probably one of the best things you can do. Now, if you know somebody well enough to go hug them, get a hug. 20 seconds is actually the time that it takes to start producing
Seems like
oxytocin.
a long time.
So it's not a quick hug, it's a good hug.
Yeah.
But, obviously with a loved one or a friend or something like that who's willing to do that for you. Otherwise, a nice massage. If you don't want to obviously strip off for that, you can get like a neck or shoulder massage or a head massage even, or you keep all your clothes on. Something where you're getting some sort of physical touch. And if you don't even want to do that with a human at all, you can hug your animal or your favorite teddy or whatever it is, just feeling that bonding with something. Yeah.
And would you recommend that be a regular thing for us?
Absolutely, yeah.
On a daily basis?
We're human beings. We are wired for connection. We are wired for a touchy-feely. We are those creatures. And so, it's an actual basic need, chemical need for us to produce this oxytocin. So, and I think we can, when we don't get that, we can feel a little bit disconnected somehow and feeling a little bit isolated. Yeah. And it's not for everyone. Not everybody wants that. But I do think it's a really nice way and an easy way a lot of the time to just get a lift and feel more connected.
Yeah. And I've had, in my experience as a nurse, lots of patients who probably live alone, don't have lots of friends and family. Yeah. So, reach out to your healthcare professionals, reach out to your stoma nurse, have a chat, go and meet them. I don't expect you to jump up and hug them if they're happy with that, absolutely. But it's that connection, isn't it? Just that short conversation that will just boost your emotions, really.
Totally. Connection is so important as a human being. We really rely on it to feel good. And we know, we've done, the studies on loneliness are extensive now, that it does actually shorten your life. It stimulates the hormones of stress, which are the cortisol and adrenaline, and we know it's not good for us long term. So,
and this is for both men and female.
Absolutely.
I know that we talked about oxytocin bringing on childbirth, but it's producing same volumes in men and women.
Absolutely, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. It just gets a massive boost if you happen to be pregnant and be giving birth. But.
Wow. They sometimes inject it, I believe, don't they, to bring it on a little bit quicker. Yeah.
Well done. Yes, they do, Ben.
So I know you talk a lot about thyroid, thyroid hormone, and a lot of patients ask me about this as well. Especially when they get becoming to a certain age potentially, and things start changing. So what can you tell me a little bit more about what thyroid hormone does?
Yes. yes, it's such a key one, and I do really feel like it's a little bit ignored a lot of the time, because it really mimics a lot of symptoms. So your thyroid hormones are produced in your thyroid gland in your neck, and the brain tells the thyroid gland to produce the hormones. So there's a pathway, and these hormones are essentially responsible for your whole body's metabolism. So by that I mean, if you think about like a thermostat on your heating, right? If you've got too much thyroid hormone, it'll turn that thermostat up, and that will make your metabolism faster. It'll make you kind of jittery if you've got too much, or anxious or sweaty, everything's hyper.
Yeah.
Right. Conversely, the other way, if your thyroid hormones are not enough, your thermostat will go down, so everything will slow down. Your metabolism will slow down, so it'll be kind of hard to lose weight, so you might be gaining weight. Your whole body will lack energy, because the thyroid hormones go to every cell and tell it how much energy to produce. So if you haven't got enough, all your energy from your head to toe won't be quite as optimal as it should be. Okay. So it can go from your head and produce things like brain fog, depression, low mood, anxiety, fogginess, that kind of stuff, memory loss. And then hair coming out, that's a classic sign of low thyroid, actually, is when your hair starts to come out. So hair loss, particularly for females, after a certain age, 40 to 50 in midlife, but for men too. It can make your skin very dry because your skin hasn't got enough energy. It can make your nails all brittle. And then going down to, your heart can beat a little bit slower or faster depending on the hormone involved. It can slow down your digestion, again, so you can get blocked up and more constipation. It can slow down the nutrient delivery to all the cells. So you can get fatigue, brain issues, memory loss, all that sort of stuff. But generally, you're going to feel quite slow and sluggish, lethargic. Now, even if you've slept well, a lot of my thyroid clients say that they wake up feeling unrefreshed because the sleep just hasn't done it for them. So it's not just sleep-related fatigue. So thyroid's really, really important. And because there's so many symptoms, it can get missed or confused for something else, particularly for women going through menopause. The symptoms are very similar. So it's really important to get your thyroid checked, particularly over the age of 45 to 50.
Would that be through your GP?
Yes, mainly through the GP. They do kind of standard tests, but you can get private testing, which is a little bit more comprehensive if you're worried and if you've been told you're kind of normal, because the standard testing is quite wide. So you could be sitting down the bottom of normal and not feel optimal with that. So again, it's a little bit of an issue with the testing, but get tested regularly. And also, if you've got unresolved symptoms like fatigue and hair loss and general sluggishness like that, or inability to lose weight, because even if starving yourself, then that's a key signal to really get a more thorough test done. But ways to boost your thyroid naturally, if you're having symptoms but you're not severe enough for medication, you can generally, the nutrients are really, really important. So your diet is incredibly important. Your thyroid needs things like tyrosine, which is protein based. It needs a whole array of vitamins and minerals to work properly. So I always suggest a really good multivitamin mineral with active levels of B vitamins, which are really key for your thyroid. So if you're on one of those, then at least your thyroid's getting some of those nutrients that it needs. But generally, as much of a nutrient dense diet that you can. You've got to manage your stress with thyroid issues as well, because stress just really knocks your thyroid out. So, we'll come on to stress in a minute, because I want to really get into that cortisol hormone. But stress management is absolutely key, particularly if you've got that kind of health condition already going on, because your body's kind of going through a stress of its own. So
probably it sounds like a lot of people might have had this underlying hypo or hyperthyrox. Is it thyrox?
Thyroid.
Thyroid, that's it. So as you said about the thermostat being too low, sluggishness, lack of energy, things like that, with being too much. Now you mentioned about then boosting it. Are we boosting it for the people who have a low amount of thyroid?
Yes. Now, if you've got too much thyroid going on, you really will need to go to get medical checkups done, because that is a situation where it might be autoimmune related. So that could be something called Graves' disease, which is hyperthyroidism, but it's autoimmune related. It's got a bit more of a complicated reasons for being. So generally hypothyroid is the low one, and that generally tends to happen to more people, so that's more common, and it generally happens as you sort of get older, mixed in with a bit of menopause and andropause as well. So your thyroid kind of just tends to just be less efficient.
Throw an operation on top of that, and you're going to have everything just depleted.
Yes.
And a lot of the symptoms that you've mentioned there, I could mention 6 or 7 of them, which most of my patients will feel from sometimes. That fatigue, massive, you know, big operations, low mood. They've got this bag that they're having to manage now. You know, all these things that you've mentioned there, they're probably thinking, well, it's just to do with the operation.
Yeah.
If it persists longer than, you know, your recovery period and you're still feeling low, get to see your GP, get the necessary tests, because it's going to be able to look a little bit finer, isn't it, into those hormones, to see whether or not actually we can give you something that's going to boost it. And it was great that, you know, you mentioned those things that we can just try and boost it naturally. And, you know, we're all into natural things. Better to do it that way than to often medicate, isn't it? Do you agree in that side of things?
Well, for the thyroid, medication is absolutely necessary if you're low, because sometimes it's only medication that will actually replace those thyroid hormones. So there's a lot of things you can do naturally to help.
Yeah.
But if they aren't being produced as much as they need to be, and you've still got fatigue and you've still got all those symptoms, you will need to go on medication. And actually medication for thyroid is just thyroxine. It's just one of your hormones. It's a very natural replacement. It's not going to you know, provide any side effects or anything like that. You just got to get the dose right.
And that shows the importance of reaching out to the healthcare professionals, isn't
because
it?
that medication can change everything if you get that right and if it's what you need. And it may be nothing to do with your operation or any life changes you're going through. It may just be the fact that your thyroid isn't just working very well.
So get to see your GP then.
Absolutely, yeah.
So one of the things I wanted to ask you about, Nicki, I've just been away on holiday, talking about melanin and melatonin, and I felt great being on holiday, having that sun shining down on me all day. Probably not being at work's been a help as well, but how can people, and you know, the hormone melatonin, how can we boost that? Is it just sun or is it more than that?
Okay, so melatonin is actually your sleep hormone.
Wow.
It often gets mixed up with melanin, which is the stuff in your skin that turns you brown. Okay, so when you get sun exposure. But melatonin is your sleep hormone, and that is produced from serotonin. Remember we talked about serotonin earlier?
Yeah.
How important that was for your alertness and your happiness and feelings of well-being.
Yeah.
So serotonin is your wake up kind of hormone, and that converts to melatonin at night when it's time to go to bed. All right. So melatonin is really, really important, particularly if you don't sleep very well, right? Or you're traveling a lot and you get that jet lag and you don't know what time zone your body's in, and your melatonin will be a little bit confused because it needs to know that it's nighttime. So what melatonin needs the most is darkness. And a regular sleep pattern. That's what melatonin loves. And if you have that, you're going to be able to produce enough melatonin for your body to go, okay, I know it's nighttime now. I know I need to go to sleep. And it's going to be, your sleep's going to be better quality and better duration. And you're less likely to be waking up, because I know that's a real problem for a lot of people. It's all waking up all through the night.
And why is that? Why is it the waking up then?
Yeah, so many different reasons. We sleep in cycles, hour and a half cycles. So often at the end of a cycle, we'll go into that non-REM, like dreamy state. Yeah. And then we can wake up through that and not go back to the deep sleep again. So we have these cycles. So it's not just go to sleep, deep sleep all night. We have all these different phases of sleep. So sometimes it's just easier to wake up than not. Often we're also waking up because we might be eating a diet that's kind of a bit blood sugar roller coastery. So we might be eating too much sugar and carbohydrates, which then, you know, spike the blood, then dip the blood sugar, and then you're kind of on what I call a blood sugar roller coaster, and then that travels through the night as well. So often if you tend to wake up at 2 or 3 in the morning, for instance, that could be because you've got a blood sugar dip. And when we have a blood sugar dip, what happens, Ben, when you have a blood sugar dip?
Yeah.
What will you do?
Probably wake up and go to the fridge and grab a chocolate bar.
Well, in the daytime, you'll reach for a snack, won't you?
Will it wake you up, though, if it was in the night time?
That's the thing. If it happens in the night, you're less likely to feel like you need to go to the fridge. But what happens when you have a dip is you release cortisol, which is your stress hormone. And your cortisol wakes you up. That's what it does in the morning, and that's what it does if it gets released suddenly like that. So when you have a blood sugar dip, it's kind of a stressful state for the body. Cortisol gets released and you wake up in the night. So one of the things, I'll come back to melatonin in a minute, but one of the things that we need to be aware of is how our diet can impact our sleep in that respect. The other thing that can wake us up is dehydration. You'll know if you've been on a on a wild night out or a drinking night out that you'll wake up everybody, you're thirsty, you need water. And obviously that's another stress on the body. Cortisol gets released, wakes you up.
So that's how it works, is the release of cortisol at that point.
Yes.
When there's that stress.
Yes. Now, it might be different for different reasons. It might be because you've got a blood sugar dip. It might be because you've had alcohol. Might be stress during the day is continuing during the night and kind of feeding your brain, that kind of stuff. So lots of different reasons for waking up. But it's generally cortisol that's triggering it.
Wow. And I think probably a lot of people in that respect, they're thinking not about diet when they're thinking they're sleep. And that's a big thing for lots and lots of patients. Huge. As we discussed earlier, is the change in their diet. And as stoma care nurses, for lots of patients, we're advising things to avoid eating, or we're advising them to add different things in to manage this new stoma. And therefore, things are going to be playing a little bit of havoc.
Yeah.
But also, when we're teaching people how to manage this new stoma, this is a big anxiety for them. You know, they may have to wake up in the middle of the night to empty the bag.
Yes. Yeah.
Sometimes 2-3 times a night.
Yeah.
Some people have to do it more than that. It's not very common, but some people do. Yeah. And some people are very aware that it's filling. So in the early days, while they're adapting to that, they're up several times a night, which is breaking, that sleep.
It is.
Then add into it the fact that they might be a little bit thirsty, or the fact that they might have had a little sherry before going to bed. Yeah. That's all going to break their sleep, isn't it? So probably reducing alcohol a little bit is probably a good thing.
Oh my God, yes. Yeah. If you're not sleeping well, reducing alcohol, honestly, if you've got gut issues and you've been through that kind of thing, alcohol is not your friend anyway, I'm afraid. Yeah. It does, it really damages the gut lining. Yeah. It's going to disrupt your blood sugar. It's going to increase any kind of anxiety or stress around whatever's going on for you. Okay. And it's going to interrupt your sleep.
Which is not what people think. It's there, it helps me sleep. But actually, you don't get into them sleep cycles that you were talking about, do you? So they're probably waking up more. So reducing the alcohol and having a well-balanced diet. Yeah. And what else would you say would be the one takeaway for people in terms of getting to sleep? Would you say go to bed earlier? Because a lot of people think I'm having an early night, I'll go to bed earlier. Is that a good thing to do?
It's a really good thing. And not just earlier, but if you can get consistency of your sleep routine, that's a massive, massive advantage. So going to bed at the same time every night, waking up at the same time every morning within a reasonable time frame. But because that's your sleep-wake cycle, the more the body has that same routine consistency, the more it knows what's going on and it can feel safe and produce all the things it's meant to produce. The one thing I would, apart from going to bed earlier and getting that consistency, the one thing I would add to that is light exposure. So important. Just like serotonin needs daylight in the morning, melatonin needs darkness. And when I say darkness, I mean pitch black darkness, because street light coming in from your window is going to interfere with the production. It's not, your brain basically needs to know that it's properly dark. So imagine when you were a caveman sitting in your cave, or when you go out wild camping or whatever, there's no lights around. Your brain goes, okay, it's time for bed. I'm going to switch on all the processes that I need to sleep. But if there's a light somewhere, that process is inhibited or it's interrupted, and it still thinks, your brain's not that clever in terms of, it doesn't know whether that light is daylight or not. So it's going to just go, okay, it's not nighttime yet. I'm not ready to switch on the sleep process. So that's going to inhibit things. And the biggest inhibitor, street lights coming in, but the biggest one is, guess what it's going to be?
Phones, laptops,
TV, alarm clocks, whatever lights you've got on in your bedroom. They're tiny little lights, and screens particularly. We've got blue light coming out of them. Yeah. Blue light is the worst for your melatonin. So if you're in bed, checking your phone, doing a last bit of emailing, work or anything like that on your laptop, it's the worst place to do it in your bedroom, because your melatonin is going to be totally affected by that. So gadgets out of the room. Your bedroom is for sleep. and other things if you want to do that. But it's really, keep it sacred for that. Because
and get
it's
some
not
good blackout blinds as well.
Blackout blinds are amazing.
Yeah.
I literally, there's no light coming through mine.
Wow.
And if you can't get those and you can't avoid the lights, then, cover up your telly or your alarm clock with a sheet or a blanket or something. Or even better, just get an eye mask. And then everything's, you don't have to worry about anything in your room. Just go to bed with a lovely, comfy
got myself
mask.
one with some speakers in it, and that sends me to sleep a lot better. But we've just moved into a new build, and outside our main window is this big lamp, and we're just, so we've got some blackout. Everything has to be blackout.
Nice.
And you do sleep a lot better that way.
It does make such a difference, doesn't it? It really does.
So eye mask are probably a good thing to take into hospital for a lot of patients.
Yes.
Because, the lights are never off, there's always beeping.
Yeah.
And that's probably why lots of people potentially don't sleep in hospital, isn't it? Because the lights are just disrupting that rhythm that we need. So get into bed earlier, make sure your room's really dark, trying to get some sort of routine, you've said, getting to bed and waking up at the same time.
And don't eat too late.
Don't eat too late.
Because that's not only going to promote indigestion because you're lying down after a big meal, but it's also not great for sleep because your body's busy digesting your food and it's not going to realise it's bedtime.
Yeah, and nothing full of sugar where you're going to be a bit up and down like that.
Yeah.
And one of the things that we advise some of our stoma patients is to have a little snack later on.
Yes, that's
just
fine.
to give the bowel something just to try and maintain a nice consistency within the bag.
That's fine too,
a little snack rather than a kebab before you go to bed.
Yeah. But possibly not sugary.
Okay.
But
so
make sure it's sort of like a handful of whatever. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but if you can get some protein in, good.
More protein.
Cheese.
We'll add that. Yeah.
So the next hormones I want to talk about come as a set, and these are our reproductive hormones. So I'm generally talking about estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone. Now, they'll be in different proportions for men and women, but we all produce all three. Right?
Okay.
So they're all important, and of course they change as we go through midlife for both men and women. So fluctuations can often affect your brain health and your mood. So it's important to know about them and also to get treatment where possible. But if not, we can manage some of those changes naturally as well. So estrogen is mainly female hormone, but it's so important for our mood because it has a role in the production of serotonin. And it has a big role to play in our brain health as well. So it makes us more alert and focused, etc. So as we go through menopause for women, this can be one of the symptoms, mood swings and memory loss and generally mood related, more anxiety, things like that. So it's important to know about estrogen and also to manage it naturally. Now, you can get obviously HRT to help you replace estrogen levels, but not everyone can take it or wants to take HRT. So there's lots of other ways you can manage estrogen, particularly through the diet. So what I like to recommend to women who are not on HRT is to eat lots of phytoestrogens. Now, these are plant-based estrogens. That's not exactly estrogen, but they're very similar. So some plants have these compounds in them that can land on our estrogen receptors and kind of trick the body into thinking we've got some estrogen going on. So it can be really helpful. It's not as potent or strong as HRT, but it can be really helpful for those women who can't take HRT or don't want to go down that route. So the sorts of foods I'm talking about are mainly soy and flaxseed. So there's only two to remember really. With any sort of good amounts of these phytoestrogens. So soy gets a bit of a bad rap with some people, and I know some people can be a little bit intolerant to it digestion-wise, so you've got to be careful if you get those kind of symptoms. But generally organic soy that's as unprocessed as possible, because we don't want any GM or pesticide-driven, lots of pesticide-ridden soy products. But organic soy like tofu, people are a little bit scared of tofu, but I actually love it because it's a bit tasteless. So you can actually you get a block of tofu, you can just chop it into cubes and you can just fry it like you would chicken with all your usual flavors. You can do garlic or spices or whatever you want to do. Treat it like a piece of meat, essentially. And you can then put it in your curries or you can have it with a different sauce, whatever.
Has it got protein in it?
It's so protein rich, It's really protein rich and it's got these phytoestrogens in it as well.
Wow. So
it's very, very healthy for particularly for women going through menopause. But generally, if you're a vegan or a vegetarian, it's a really good source of
I think that's why people think just, you know, vegans, vegetarians, that's all they're really eating is these sort of things. But this is for anybody, isn't it?
Anybody.
You know, trying to experiment a little bit
Yeah.
with different recipes and adding it in there.
Totally.
It's a substitute to you know, to meat as well.
My son is a vegetarian actually, and he relies on tofu a lot. And do you know what he does? We've got an air fryer. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's all the trend now, isn't it? And he grates it into a bowl. I know, it's crazy. So you get blocks of tofu, you grate it into a bowl, and then he puts kind of all these different flavours into it, and then he air fries it, and it's like pulled pork. It's incredible. Amazing tip out there for anyone who wants a different way of cooking tofu.
And it's easy to digest as well, isn't it?
So good.
So I think lots of the times we're asking patients to avoid eating tough meats, things like that. When we want them to get protein and chicken and things, which often chicken's better, but I think if we're going to substitute it for something that's high in protein and it's got all of those hormones, that's going to boost, you know,
amazing
your estrogen.
If you're going through menopause as well, girls. So if that's something that you're going through, then get the tofu in
as well.
But things like soy milk, you know, as long as it's not full of sugar, you don't want the sweetened stuff. Try and avoid the sweetened stuff and the too processed. So just organic soy milk. Or soy yogurts now as well. So those are different ways you can get the soy in. Or edamame beans are great. I love those. Miso is another form of soy as well. And then flax seeds, so helpful if, of course, they don't aggravate your gut, because they can be. So you want to mill them. You want to mill them so that they're properly ground.
Okay.
And then if you do get any symptoms, obviously avoid. But they're actually can be very helpful for gut issues, and they've got these phytoestrogens in them as well, and they're full of fibre and all sorts of other nutrients. So they may not be suitable for everybody, but if you can tolerate them, it's a really good way of getting those nutrients.
What do people eat them with? Because I think people have had like yogurts and kind of muesli and things like that. But if it's ground up, is it just like a bit of a sprinkling?
Anything. Do you know what? It's tasteless. So you can, put a tablespoon into your soups, into your cooking, into your yogurts. You know, we've just been talking about our overnight oats, haven't we?
Yeah, absolutely.
And we put
Sprinkle
flax seeds all over those. Anything, smoothies, whatever you
People
want.
can't say, well, I don't like the taste of that, because there's no flavour in it.
No, there's no excuse.
It's only got positives about this other things.
It really has.
Oh, good.
So that's estrogen.
Yeah.
Progesterone is the other sex hormone particularly for women, very important. It's the hormone that we produce when we ovulate. So going for women who still have a cycle, it's really important. And then as you go through menopause, the levels do decline. But progesterone is your anti-anxiety hormone. So often when we go through, which is why a common symptom of menopause is more anxiety, more stress, worse sleep, because progesterone also helps you sleep.
Yeah.
So go and see your doctor if you're worried about that, and get your levels tested, and they may put you on progesterone replacement.
Wow.
Testosterone is the other one, which both women and men have. Yeah. Men, obviously, that's the hormone that men lose as they go through midlife. So that is common symptoms of low testosterone might be fatigue, low mood, low motivation.
What about this?
As well as low
People
libido.
losing their hair,
And
things like this. Male pattern baldness, I think,
Absolutely.
is contributing, isn't it?
And no, taking it's not going to get your hair back, but it can help a lot of men with those issues as they go through midlife.
Okay.
And women too. We produce it as well, and we have lower levels as we go through, and it really can affect your mood and your well-being as well.
I think for people who, like I say, are probably going through an operation at the same time as potentially these things occurring anyway, and the body going through an enormous amount of stress, they probably need to look out for those things after they've got through their journey, through the stress of the operation. And, if these things are coming up, to see, it sounds like it's the GP, isn't it, at this point, who needs to be testing for this. But obviously, giving yourself those little boosts here, there, and everywhere, like you've suggested, is only going to help you feel that little bit better.
Absolutely.
And it sounds like all these hormones are so interlinked. Some are sleep, some are to do with your mood, but most of them do sound like it's helping you feel better in yourself.
Yeah.
Definitely your mood. Yeah. That's a big one. But actually, if you're not sleeping well, you're not going to feel very good, are you? You're not going to be motivated then to get up and start walking. So all these tiny little tricks and tips that you've provided today, I think, are really going to help people just feel better all round, really. Yeah.
And one of the biggest things in a lot of this that we've been skirting around quite a bit, but is stress management.
Yeah.
Now, stress is going to be, it's not just a factor for us generally, but if you've been through something like this, your health condition is going to obviously impact how you're dealing with stress and your stress levels in general. So stress management is going to be the key piece in the middle of all this. So you can do all these other little things, but that piece is the priority for me.
Yeah.
Because I know, I've seen it in our clinic for the last 10 years, is how that excess cortisol affects people and affects all the other hormones. So if we talked about that orchestra thing.
Yeah.
So cortisol would be the lead singer, right?
Okay.
So the lead singer's out there belting out the song, but if they're out of tune, no one's going to feel good. No one's going to sound good. It affects every other hormone in the body.
Wow.
So the way we manage stress is going to have the biggest impact on how we feel.
To allow those other bits to work effectively.
Exactly.
And I think, and one of the hormones you talked about was actually becoming together with people. And I think for lots of patients, by reaching out to people, allowing people to take on a little bit of our own stress, then it reduces our own, doesn't it?
Hugely.
Can you do my shopping for me? Can you come and help me today? I need to come and, I don't know, clean the windows or something. By reaching out to people, you're going to feel better, and actually they're going to be able to do a task for you and reduce your own stress levels. Because I've had lots of patients over the years who, like I say, live alone, don't have many friends and family. They're having to do their own cooking, their own cleaning, get up in the morning, wash themselves, all these things that are just a massive stress. So what happens? They don't get done.
And we're so terrible at asking for help, aren't we?
Oh,
we always
absolutely.
feel so guilty to ask others for help. But it's so important because
Especially
people do
if
want to
you've been so
help
busy.
you.
Yeah, of course they do. Yeah.
And it's part of your stress management. So if we're talking about a stress management, toolkit almost, asking for help is the first one,
Yes,
right?
of course.
And looking out for that. And then next, you really want to start looking at how to switch off that stress response. Okay, so you may have a lot of stress in your life, but it's how you deal with it that's important.
Okay.
So dealing with it, your emotions. So if you've had trauma or you're having emotional issues, getting help with that.
Yeah.
First and foremost. And then these daily habits can be really, really helpful. I mean, not just helpful, but essential. Daily habits. So 10 to 15 minutes a day of just managing your stress in some way. So that could be, it could be, I'll go from one extreme, meditation. I love meditation. It's so healing and it's got so much research behind it. But a lot of people will go, I don't want to do that. I don't want to sit cross-legged. You don't have to sit cross-legged, by the way. You can sit in a chair and you can just literally listen to a meditation. We've all heard of Headspace, the
Yes,
app.
absolutely.
There's lots of them, like Calm, and there's lots of other
we've
amazing.
promoted them in the past, haven't we?
Yeah, and just sitting down listening to that for 10 minutes can literally switch off those thoughts, that stress response, and start teaching your body to relax, to switch on
present
that
as well, isn't it, in the
parasympathetic
moment?
nervous system, which is our rest and digest system, instead of our sympathetic nervous system, which is our stress survival mode. So we have two systems and we're in one or the other. We're most of us, the time we're in this survival mode, fight or flight, but we want to train the body to be more in this parasympathetic. So really activating our vagus nerve, which is that calming gut-brain nerve. And we can do that by kind of singing or humming. Reading a book, actually, it's been shown scientifically to switch off that cortisol response.
Wow.
So just read for 10 minutes. It doesn't have to be anything exciting. Most people love to read or to listen to a book if you're Audible.
Yeah,
whatever.
Lots of people have different avenues to take that stuff in
Totally.
now. And, one of the things that comes up quite often is, and patients will bring this suitcase of things to bring in hospital, books, they'll have magazines and things, but won't even touch them in hospital because that's one of the things that they switch off, that focus.
Yeah.
And things like Headspace, Calm, getting on there and having that 5-10 minutes just to switch off, be present, probably just allows them to gather thoughts, doesn't it, and come back down and think about what's actually happening, because it can be a roller coaster, and it is a roller coaster that they're all on, up and down, good and bad days. But by sitting and focusing and then reaching out to family and discussing and offloading all of this thing, I think will really help them just to kind of boost their overall well-being more than anything.
Completely agree. Yeah, it's really important, but also prioritizing it, because I talk about this a lot. Self-care. I talk to our women clients about this, and say how important it is, and they go, yeah, and then don't do it, because we are so wired to do everything but look after our own self-care. So I would just say put it at the top of your list and don't sacrifice it for anything.
Yeah, we like to look after other people, but we don't
do.
look after ourselves.
Exactly.
But you will have family coming round who want to look after you and do things for you. Accept it, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know,
Oh, completely.
I'm okay. I don't need anything. Accept the help, because
Grab
that will,
it.
yeah, absolutely reduce your own stress, and you can move forward with
Yeah.
that then, can't you?
Yeah.
Lovely.
And just lastly, on the stress thing, I also want to warn about technology and digital stress, because
Okay.
we are all wired to our gadgets and our phones. I don't know how, I mean, the studies done on how often we look at our phones is
Yes.
scary. And this just all adds to our stress and cortisol. Sometimes we might get a dopamine hit if you get a like for something, but generally it's more the opposite, and you're actually going to feel like, comparisonitis, and you're going to kind of be, especially if you've got a health condition and you're looking at everyone else's glossy lives, it's really not good for your mental health. Pushes up your anxiety and pushes up your stress. So if we can manage that slightly better so that we're not constantly looking at it, so maybe we have some days or digital breaks, digital detoxes maybe, where put it in a drawer for a couple of hours, make yourself not check it, and do something a bit more uplifting. Listen to music, read a book, go for a walk, do something that's going to be good for you rather than
well, everybody's on the phones now, isn't it? I was at the airport last week and nobody was talking. It's a good way to switch off, I think, isn't it?
And where's the oxytocin going to come from if we're not talking to each other and we're all looking at a screen?
I know.
It's just gone.
But again, it can probably work both ways for patients, couldn't it? Those 2 hours of dedicated time where you're not looking at your phone, or when you are looking at your phone, I should say, if you're looking at those apps or you're reaching out and getting support online, that's good.
That's good.
But too much
that's good use of the technology. It's when it drifts into the other stuff that we need to be really careful.
Are there any other ways that people, can really switch off, do you think?
Oh gosh, yeah. Using that time, put your phone away in a drawer for a little bit and pick up a book. Oh, I've got a really good one actually right here that I've written myself. Yeah, it's not you, it's your hormones. So we've been talking about hormones today. All the information's in here, plus loads more tips and tricks on what to eat, how to manage your stress and all of that, and some recipes in there as well. So
where can they find that? Is it an Amazon buy?
Amazon, yeah. You can get the Kindle as well, and it was just been recently updated too. So
lovely. So thank you so much for today, Nicki, and I know the audience will have gained so much from today, because certainly I did, and I thought I knew a lot of these, but actually thinking a little bit more in depth into this, it really made me think what I should be doing to increase my hormones and make me feel better. And it's only those small little hints and tricks sometimes, isn't it? Just to boost things. And I'm hoping that, especially for stoma patients, people out there going through this journey, I'm hoping that they can take on so much from today, and I know they will, just to help them on that difficult journey, make it that little bit easier. So thank you so much
You're so welcome.
for your time today.
You're so welcome.